It is 3 a.m. You suddenly wake up, staring at the ceiling. You try to close your eyes. You toss, you turn, but your brain is completely awake. Today, doctors call this insomnia. We treat it like a disease. We take pills to stop it, and we stress out because we have to be at work in 5 hours. But what if I told you there is absolutely nothing wrong with you? What if waking up in the dead of night is not a glitch in your brain? What if it is actually an ancient survival code, hardwired into your DNA by your ancestors, trying to save your life? Tonight, when the sun goes down, you are going to walk into a room and flip a switch. Light will flood the walls, and you won't think twice about it. But for 99.9% of human history, that switch did not exist. When the sun set, the world didn't just get dim. It went completely, suffocatingly black. You could not even see your own hand in front of your face. Modern humans almost never experience true darkness. But for over 300,000 years, every single one of your ancestors spent roughly half of their entire lives in near total blindness. So, what did they actually do for all those terrifying hours? The answer changes everything we think we know about sleep, about storytelling, and about what it actually means to be a human being. Let's take a trip into the pitch-black darkness of the Ice Age, and I will show you why your modern sleeping habits are a complete biological scandal. To understand why you wake up at 3 a.m., we first have to understand the most terrifying moment of the prehistoric day: sunset. Before the invention of fire, our ancestors were just like every other primate on Earth. When the sun went down, you climbed a tree, you found a highly elevated branch, and you stayed perfectly still. Moving at night meant becoming food. Humans have incredibly terrible night vision. But the predators that hunted us? The prehistoric leopards, the giant hyenas, the dire wolves? They could see in the dark just fine. In the prehistoric food chain, the night did not belong to us. It belonged to the monsters. During the winter months, the sun would set early, plunging the world into darkness for up to 14 hours. Imagine that. 14 hours of sitting in the freezing dark, listening to the branches snap below you, knowing that if you fell asleep and rolled off your branch, you would never wake up. But then, roughly 1 million years ago, a massive shift happened. In places like Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, early humans figured out how to control fire. Fire didn't just keep people warm. Fire completely restructured the human day. It changed the math of survival overnight. Picture a campfire. It casts a glowing ring of light that is roughly 30 feet in diameter. That ring was not just light. It was a literal force field. Inside that 30-foot circle, the giant predators would not come. Animals are terrified of fire. But outside that circle, if you took 3 steps into the pitch-black void, you were back on the menu. Anthropologists who study modern hunter-gatherer groups have documented this exact phenomenon. Even today, people who wander away from the fire at night are significantly more likely to be killed by nocturnal predators. So, early humans were trapped inside this 30-foot circle of safety. But the fire gave them something they had never possessed in the entire history of our evolution. It gave them extra hours. Before fire, the useful day ended the second the sun dipped below the horizon. You had maybe 12 hours of daylight to hunt, gather, and survive. Fire suddenly added 2 to 4 usable, safe hours to every single day. And over thousands of generations, those extra hours inside the glowing circle physically changed the human brain. In 2014, an anthropologist named Polly Wiesner published a mind-blowing study. She spent years living with and recording conversations among the Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert, one of the last groups on Earth still living the original hunter-gatherer lifestyle. She wanted to know what humans actually talked about before iPhones and televisions existed. What she found was shocking. During the day, about 80% of all conversations were practical. Who is hunting where? Which poisonous plants should we avoid? How are we splitting the meat? Daytime talk was pure survival logistics. It was stressful. It was work. But at night? Around the fire? The entire character of human interaction flipped. 81% of the conversations around the campfire were stories. They were tales of people in distant lands, wild adventures, myths about the origins of the stars, and jokes that made the entire camp erupt in laughter. The campfire was the original theater. It was the original internet. Under the safety of the firelight, humans didn't have to scan the bushes for predators anymore. For the first time in history, their brains could relax. They learned to think beyond the immediate, terrifying present. They learned to imagine things that did not exist yet. Every movie you have ever loved, every book you have ever read, every religion, and every piece of human culture was born in those extra 2 hours around a prehistoric fire. If realizing that a burning log is the only reason human imagination exists gives you chills, do me one small favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. This channel is dedicated to uncovering the forgotten superpowers of the human race, and I want you sitting around the fire with us for the rest of the journey. But the night wasn't just about telling stories, because eventually the fire would burn low, and it was time to sleep. And this is where we discover the massive lie you have been living your entire life. You were not designed to sleep the way you sleep right now. In 2001, a historian named Roger Kirch published a paper that completely shattered modern sleep science. He had spent 16 years digging through historical records, looking at diaries, court documents, and medical texts from hundreds of years ago. He found something that nobody expected. Over 500 historical references, from 15th century prayer books all the way back to Homer's Odyssey, mentioned the exact same bizarre routine. They called it first sleep and second sleep. Before the industrial age, human beings did not get into bed and sleep for 8 straight hours. That is a modern invention. For thousands of years, people went to bed shortly after sunset. They slept for about 4 hours. Then, completely naturally, they woke up. They stayed awake for 1 to 2 hours in the absolute dead of night. And then, they went back to sleep for another 4 hours until dawn. This was not insomnia. This was normal. This was how every human being on the planet operated. So, what did people do during that awake period in the middle of the night? They called this window the watch. And they did everything. A 16th century French physician actually wrote a medical manual recommending that couples conceive children during this window, claiming they would have more energy and do it better. People would get out of bed and visit their neighbors in the dark. They would interpret their dreams while the visions were still fresh in their minds. They would write. Or they would simply lie in bed in the absolute silence and think. Doctors in the 1500s advised their patients that the best time in the entire day to study, reflect, and find peace was during the watch, the quiet hours between first and second sleep, when the mind was calm and the world was entirely still. Historians had actually been reading these ancient texts for centuries, but they kept translating first sleep incorrectly. They literally altered medieval Latin texts because modern translators could not comprehend that humans ever slept differently than we do today. But in 1992, science finally proved that history was right all along. A psychiatrist named Thomas Ware at the National Institute of Mental Health ran a fascinating, almost cruel experiment. He took a group of modern volunteers and completely stripped all artificial light from their lives. No phones, no lamps, no flashlights. For 1 entire month, they experienced 14 hours of pure darkness every single night, exactly like our Ice Age ancestors. The results were terrifyingly fast. Within weeks, every single participant's modern sleep schedule collapsed. Their bodies completely rewired themselves, and they all settled into the exact same ancient pattern. 4 hours of sleep, 2 hours of quiet wakefulness, and 4 more hours of sleep. Nobody told them to do this. Their bodies just did it. It was as if an ancient software program had been sitting dormant inside their DNA, waiting for the lights to go out. But Ware found something even more incredible. He measured the hormones in the participants' brains during that 2 a.m. awake period. The volunteers were not annoyed. They weren't stressed about being awake. Their brains were flooding with massive levels of a hormone called prolactin. This is the exact same hormone your brain releases during deep meditation or right after a massive physical release like orgasm. The participants described feeling deeply peaceful. They felt a profound, dreamlike state of reflection. It turns out, the watch wasn't just a gap in sleep. It was an entirely distinct state of human consciousness. A state of pure biological peace that 99% of modern humans will never, ever experience. So, who murdered it? Who stole this peaceful state of consciousness from us? The answer is simple. We did. We killed it with light. In the 1600s, cities like Paris and London began installing the very first street lamps to stop criminals. Suddenly, the night, which had always been a place of primal fear, became navigable. For most of human history, being awake and outside in the dark was literally illegal. Have you ever wondered where the word curfew comes from? It comes from the medieval French phrase couvre-feu, which translates to cover fire. A bell would ring at night, ordering the entire town to extinguish their fires and go to sleep. Night belonged to the monsters, the criminals, and the supernatural. Walking around after dark was a terrifying concept. But then came gas lamps. And then, in 1879, Thomas Edison commercialized the electric light bulb. Within a single generation, The dark night that had ruled human biology for 300,000 years was completely erased. We conquered the dark. We flooded it with electricity, and we called it progress. But in doing so, we completely broke our own brains. Today, you are exposed to artificial light for an average of 7 hours after the sun goes down. Your body is incredibly smart, but it is also easily tricked. It does not know the difference between an LED screen and the actual sun. When the blue light from your phone hits your retina at 11:30 p.m. while you are scrolling through social media, your brain panics. It thinks it is high noon. It violently suppresses your production of melatonin, the hormone that tells your body it is time to sleep. We completely shattered the circadian rhythm that evolved over millions of years. Researchers recently took a group of chronic insomniacs and sent them camping for just 1 week with zero artificial light. No phones, no flashlights, just campfires. Within 7 days, their biological clocks completely reset. Their bodies began pouring out melatonin the second the sun went down. That is all it takes for 300,000 years of programming to reboot. We didn't just change our bedtime. We eliminated an entire phase of human existence. That quiet, reflective, prolactin-fueled meditative state doesn't exist anymore. Instead, we have modern insomnia. So, what if your 3 a.m. wake-up call isn't a disorder at all? What if waking up in the dark and lying there in the silence isn't your body malfunctioning? What if it is just your body remembering what it was built to do? For hundreds of thousands of years, your ancestors spent their nights in a rhythm that we threw away for a light switch. They slept in 2 phases. They woke up in the dark. They looked up at a Milky Way galaxy that wasn't hidden by city smog, and they thought deeply about their lives, their dreams, and the world they would wake up to. So the next time your eyes snap open at 3 a.m., don't reach for your phone. Don't stress about the morning. Just lie there. Let the dark wrap around you. You aren't sick. You are just feeling the echo of the Ice Age, calling you back to the fire. If uncovering the brutal, unfiltered truth of human history gives you chills, do me a massive favor and hit that subscribe button right now. We are proving that your ancestors were absolute geniuses, and I want you in the tribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.